When words become weapons between mothers and daughters, the wounds may never heal. "You're not even half as smart as my mother-in-law," my daughter Camille shouted, her voice slicing through the Sunday afternoon quiet. I stood up from the dining table, my legs trembling beneath my floral dress. The room seemed to tilt sideways as 38 years of motherhood crashed down around me. My heart hammered so hard against my ribs I feared it might break through. "Camille," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't mean that." But she did. I could see it in her eyes, those same hazel eyes I'd gazed into when she was just minutes old, promising to protect her from all the world's hurts. Now those eyes were cold, dismissive, looking at me like I was nothing. Behind her, Estelle Johnson, my daughter's mother-in-law, dabbed the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin, satisfaction glinting in her eyes like her diamond earrings caught the light. Her burgundy nails tapped the wine glass like a metronome, counting down my dignity. My son-in-law Ronald placed his hand on Camille's shoulder, squeezing gently. "Honey, maybe we should change the subject." But the damage was done. The words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back. If you're wondering where this story begins, it wasn't at this dinner table in Atlanta, Georgia. It started years ago when my Camille, headstrong and brilliant, fell for Ronald's charm and ambition. When she started measuring her worth through Estelle's designer-clad approval. When I became the outdated voice she needed to silence. I'm Loretta Daniels, 63 years old, retired librarian, widow, mother of 2. I've never owned anything designer. My hands show years of work, gardening, cooking, holding books and babies. My wisdom wasn't packaged in glossy paper with a bow. It came wrapped in church hymns, bedtime stories, and quiet resilience after my Ernest passed. "Mama, you just don't understand how things work now," Camille continued, warming to her attack. "Estelle built her own business from nothing. She knows about investments, connections, building wealth. What do you know about any of that?" Each word was a small death. I looked around the dining room of the house I'd helped them buy with money Ernest and I had saved. The collard greens and cornbread I'd brought sat untouched beside Estelle's store-bought appetizers. I know about building a life that stands when storms come. I know about the difference between wealth and worth. Estelle laughed, a tinkling sound like ice and crystal. "Loretta, dear, those are such lovely sentiments. But sentiments don't pay for vacations in the Bahamas or private schools." The room felt too hot, too small. My grandson, Elijah, only 4 years old, watched from the doorway with wide eyes. What was he learning in this moment about how to treat the women who raised you? "Camille," I tried again, "we should talk about this another time. Not here, not like this." "There's nothing to talk about. I'm tired of you judging my choices, my husband, my life. At least Estelle believes in me." My throat tightened with unshed tears. In that moment, I saw something in Ronald's eyes, a flicker of something guarded, calculating, that sent a chill through me. But I was too wounded to process it. "I've always believed in you, since before you could speak." "Well, maybe that's the problem. You see me as your baby, not as a woman who knows her own mind." I gathered my purse, my dignity. Standing tall, despite the weight crushing my chest, I walked to my grandson and kissed his forehead. "Nana loves you. Never forget that." Then I turned to my daughter one last time. Our eyes met, and for just a breath, I thought I saw regret flicker across her face. But it vanished, replaced by that hard mask she'd been wearing more often lately. When you've lived enough life to understand the difference between flattery and love, you'll find me waiting, And I'll still love you then. I walked out the door without looking back, though everything in me wanted to run to her, shake her, make her see. But some lessons can't be taught. They can only be lived. What I didn't know then was that those cruel words were just the beginning. What I couldn't see was the darkness gathering around my child like storm clouds, how those who flattered her were laying traps at her feet. Have you ever had someone you love choose someone else's version of you? Have you felt that hollow ache when blood ties seem thinner than water? If you have, stay with me. This story might heal something in you too. Like and subscribe to hear how a mother's quiet strength became the lifeline her daughter never knew she'd need. Also, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. I drove home that night with tears blurring the streetlights, not knowing that in 6 months' time, everything would change. Not knowing that sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage a woman can have.
3 weeks passed without a word from Camille. My calls went to voicemail. My texts received one-word replies, if any. The silence in my home grew heavier each day. I kept myself busy. Tended my garden, volunteered at church, made casseroles for sick neighbors. But every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt, hoping it was her. It never was. The first time I drove past their neighborhood, just to see if her car was there, just to know she was okay, I felt ashamed, like I'd become some kind of stalker instead of a mother. But mothers know when something isn't right. We feel it in places deeper than bone. One evening, my phone finally rang with her number. "Mama?" Camille said, her voice distant. "Elijah wanted to say goodnight to you." My grandson's sweet voice was balm to my aching heart. After he said goodnight, I asked, "How are you doing, baby?" "Fine, busy. Ronald just made senior partner at his firm. We're looking at private schools for Elijah." "That's wonderful," I said, though something in her voice sounded strained. "Maybe I could come by next weekend? I miss you." A pause. "We're actually heading to Miami. Estelle connected Ronald with some investors. It's a big opportunity." Always Estelle, always an excuse. The next morning, I ran into Josephine Blackwell at the grocery store. She'd worked as a paralegal at Ronald's firm before retiring. "Loretta, how's that beautiful grandbaby? And Camille? I heard Ronald's doing quite well for himself." "Yes, senior partner now," I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice, despite everything. Josephine's eyebrows lifted. "Senior partner? At Franklin and Pierce? That's interesting." "What do you mean?" She leaned closer. "I still have lunch with the girls from the office. Ronald is on thin ice there. Something about client funds? Nothing proven, but, well, senior partner. That's not what I heard." That night, I couldn't sleep. Why would Camille lie? Or was she the one being lied to? When my son Terrence called the next day, I mentioned nothing about it. Terrence had never approved of Ronald, said he had shark eyes, and I didn't want to stir that pot. But as we were ending our call, he said something that made my skin prickle. "By the way, Mama, you still own your house outright, don't you? Don't sign anything without having me look at it first, okay?" "Why would you say that?" "Just heard some things. Probably nothing, but promise me." I promised, confusion growing into worry. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived from Magnolia Heights Credit Union. I'd never opened an account there. Inside was a loan statement with my name on it, a second mortgage against my house for $175,000. My hands trembled as I dialed the bank. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't discuss account details unless you come in person with identification." I drove there immediately, heart pounding. After 30 minutes with a manager and proof of identity, they confirmed it. The loan application was fraudulent. Someone had attempted to use my home as collateral. We flagged it in final processing when signatures didn't match. It happens more than you think. Often it's family members. Family members. I sat in my car afterwards, clutching the steering wheel, my mind racing to places I didn't want to go. The loan application had been submitted 3 days after that fateful dinner. When I got home, a sleek black car was parked in my driveway. Estelle Johnson stepped out, designer sunglasses perched on her nose, leather handbag hanging from her wrist. "Estelle," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We need to talk about Camille."
I didn't invite Estelle inside. We stood on my porch, the late afternoon sun highlighting the silver in her expensively highlighted hair. "Camille is concerned about you," she said, voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Living alone in this big house, all these expenses. Ronald and I have been discussing ways to help ease your burden." "Is that why someone tried to take out a fraudulent loan against my home?" I asked. Her smile flickered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do, and I think you need to leave now." After she left, I sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. 30 years as a librarian had taught me one thing: information is power. And I needed information. The next morning, I drove to the county records office. Public records don't lie, and money always leaves a trail. The clerk, a young woman named Destiny with kind eyes, helped me navigate the system. "I'm researching property values in my daughter's neighborhood," I explained. 2 hours later, I had my first piece of the puzzle. Ronald and Camille's home, the one they'd bought 3 years ago with my $50,000 gift for the down payment, had a second mortgage taken out 8 months ago. Then a third just 6 weeks ago. "Bad sign," Destiny murmured, looking at the screen. "That's what we call the debt spiral. Take out one loan to pay another, then another to pay that one." Next, I looked up Estelle's business, Johnson Luxury Properties. On paper, it looked impressive, but the filing history showed multiple tax liens and a bankruptcy reorganization 2 years ago, not the picture of success Estelle painted. I was scribbling notes when my phone rang. It was Catherine Wong, my church friend who worked at Atlanta First Bank. "Loretta, remember how you helped my son with his college applications? I think I can return the favor. Can you meet me for coffee? Not here. The diner on Peachtree." An hour later, Catherine slid a folder across the table. "I could lose my job for this, but what I'm seeing isn't right. Your name was flagged in our system as a potential victim of identity theft." Inside the folder were applications for credit cards, personal loans, and line of credit increases, all with my information, all submitted in the past month, all denied because of mismatched signatures or verification failures. Someone's getting desperate, and they're using your good credit rating to try to get cash, fast. That evening, Terrence came by with Chinese takeout. After we ate, he pulled out his laptop. "Mama, I didn't want to worry you, but now I think you need to know. I've been watching Ronald for months. Something isn't right." My son, always the protector, had compiled a spreadsheet tracking Ronald's social media posts against his claimed income. The math doesn't add up. The vacations, the cars, Camille's jewelry, they're living way beyond a junior associate's means. "He told Camille he made senior partner," I said. Terrence shook his head. "He's been saying that for months in his circle. It's not true. I checked." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of what we were uncovering. "Should I tell Camille?" I asked, voicing my greatest dilemma. Would she believe you, or would she run straight to Ronald and Estelle? The truth hurt. My own daughter would choose them over me, over the truth itself. "There's more," Terrence said quietly. "I know someone who works at the courthouse. Ronald has a sealed record from 10 years ago, financial fraud charges. They were dropped, but..." How did we not know this before? I asked, stomach churning. People see what they want to see, Mama, especially when they're in love. For the next week, I became a detective in my daughter's life. I drove past their home, noting when lights were on and off, observed Ronald's schedule, documented Estelle's visits. I called Camille's old college roommate, pretending I wanted to surprise Camille with a reunion. Learned that Ronald had approached her, too, with an investment opportunity she'd declined. He got real pushy about it, she told me. When I said no, he never spoke to me again. That's when Camille stopped calling, too. The pattern became clear. Ronald isolated Camille from anyone who wouldn't buy into his schemes, and Estelle was his willing accomplice, playing the role of the sophisticated mentor while cutting Camille off from her roots. I prayed for guidance. Confronting Camille directly would only push her further away, but standing by while my child walked into disaster wasn't an option either. Then came the call that changed everything. Mrs. Daniels, this is Gregory Thompson from Georgia Trust Bank. I'm calling about the signature verification on a wire transfer from your account. I don't have an account at Georgia Trust. Not you, ma'am. Your daughter, Camille Johnson. She listed you as your security contact. We're trying to verify a $212,000 wire transfer to an overseas account. The signature seems inconsistent with our records. That's nearly everything in her savings, I whispered. Yes, ma'am. That's why we're calling. Stop the transfer, I said, voice shaking. It's not authorized. After hanging up, I sat frozen, staring at the photo of Camille on my mantel. The pieces fit together now, forming a picture too terrible to ignore. That night, I found it. The smoking gun. An email accidentally sent to my address instead of Estelle's, from RJ Investments, detailing the wire transfer to an account in the Cayman Islands. Ronald's initials, an account controlled by him, not Camille. I printed the email and placed it in a folder alongside the other evidence I'd gathered. 30 pages documenting a betrayal so methodical, it made my heart ache. While all this was happening, Estelle had been busy weaving her own web. She'd started a women's investment club with Camille as the star recruit. 10 of Camille's friends had joined, each contributing $5,000 for Estelle and Ronald to multiply through their special investments. It's not what you know, it's who you know, Estelle would say, dangling connections like bait. And darling, I know everybody who matters. What she really knew was how to spot vulnerable women, newly divorced, recently widowed, or like my Camille, desperate for approval. Women with access to money but little financial education. I learned this from Patrice, one of Camille's childhood friends who called me in tears. Mrs. Daniels, I think I've made a terrible mistake. That investment with Estelle and Ronald? 6 months now, and all I get are excuses. No returns, no statements. Just talk. While Estelle played mentor, Ronald executed the financial maneuvers. They worked as a team. She built the trust, he broke the bank. And my daughter was both their accomplice and their victim. From my careful observation, I could see Camille's life beginning to fray around the edges. She canceled her salon appointment, something she'd never done before. Elijah's private preschool sent a notice about late tuition payments. The luxury SUV she drove was suddenly replaced with a used sedan. Just being practical, she told her friends, according to Patrice. Designer labels and fancy cars don't matter as much to me now. But I knew my daughter. These weren't choices, they were necessities. The money was drying up. One Tuesday afternoon, I followed Ronald from his office. Instead of heading home, he drove to an upscale apartment complex 30 miles from their house. He stayed for 2 hours, looking harried when he emerged. A young woman walked him to his car, kissed his cheek. I snapped a photo with my phone, hands trembling. The next day, I parked outside his office building around lunchtime. Ronald emerged, shoulders tense, phone pressed to his ear. "I need more time," I heard him say as he passed my car. "The transfer hit a snag. Tell him I'm good for it." His face was drawn, eyes darting, not the confident mask he wore at family gatherings. This was the face of a man watching his schemes collapse. Later that week, I received a text from Camille that made my heart sink. "Mama, can you watch Elijah this weekend? Emergency work trip with Ronald. Estella's busy." In the 3 months since our falling out, she'd never asked me to babysit. Something had changed. When I picked up Elijah, Camille looked exhausted. Her clothes, usually immaculate, were wrinkled. The diamond earrings Ronald had given her for their anniversary, gone. "Everything okay, baby?" I asked carefully. "Just busy. Really busy." Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "There's some business stuff happening. Good stuff." But her voice trembled on the word good. As she hugged Elijah goodbye, I noticed something else. Her wedding ring was missing too. That weekend with my grandson brought both joy and worry. 4-year-olds notice everything. "Mommy cries at night," he told me while building with blocks, "when Daddy isn't home." "Where is Daddy when he's not home?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Working, or with the other lady, the one with the baby." My heart stopped. "What baby, sweetheart?" "The little baby at the other house. Daddy says it's a secret house." On Sunday evening, instead of Camille picking up Elijah as planned, Estelle arrived at my door. "Camille and Ronald got delayed," she said, reaching for Elijah. "I'll take him home." I blocked the doorway. "That's not the arrangement I made with my daughter." Estelle's pleasant mask slipped. "Listen, Loretta, I know what you've been doing. The questions, the snooping. You need to stop." "Or what?" She stepped closer, voice low so Elijah couldn't hear from the living room. "Or things could get very difficult for Camille. She's in a delicate position right now. Ronald is handling it. We don't need your interference." "Is that a threat?" "It's reality. Camille chose her path. She chose us. Stay in your lane, or you'll only make things worse for her." I held my ground. "I'll keep Elijah until Camille comes herself." Estelle's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, old woman. This is so much bigger than you think." As she turned to leave, I said, "One question, Estelle. Does Camille know about the baby?" She froze for just a heartbeat, long enough to confirm what Elijah had innocently revealed. Then she walked away, heels clicking sharply on my porch steps. I locked the door, hands shaking. The game had changed. This wasn't just about money anymore. My phone rang an hour later. Camille. "Mama, I think I'm in trouble. Real trouble."
"Mama, can I come over?" Camille's voice cracked on the phone. "Now?" "Of course, baby. Elijah's already asleep in the guest room." An hour later, my daughter stood at my door, a shadow of herself. Her eyes were rimmed red, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just jeans and a plain sweater. "He's been lying," she whispered as I pulled her into my arms. "About everything." We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where she'd done homework as a child. I made her chamomile tea with honey, just like when she had nightmares growing up. Certain wounds call us back to childhood comforts. I found bank statements she said, hands wrapped around the mug. Hidden in his desk. Our savings account? Emptied. Our retirement funds? Gone. Second and third mortgages I never signed for. How long has this been happening? I asked gently. I don't know. Month, maybe years. She looked up, eyes haunted. I trusted him completely. I signed whatever he put in front of me. Estelle always said Ronald had the financial genius in the family. I bit my tongue, held back the "I told you so" that threatened to spill out. Those words never heal wounds. They only deepen them. What happens now? I asked instead. I don't know. Ronald says it's just temporary, market fluctuations. He's waiting for some big deals to close. Her voice hardened. But he's lying. I can see it now. He lies as easily as he breathes. I reached across the table, took her hands in mine. Baby, there's more you need to know. I showed her what I'd found, the fraudulent loan attempts, the investment club complaints, the evidence of funds being moved offshore. With each document, her face crumbled a little more. Why would he do this? She whispered. We had everything. Some people can never have enough, and some mistakes start small, then grow until they swallowed you whole. She stayed the night, sleeping in her old bedroom. In the morning, over coffee, she seemed stronger. I'm going to confront him, make him show me everything. If he's in trouble, we'll face it together, fix it together. My heart sunk. She still believed there was something to save. Camille? Honey, I think there's something else you should know. But before I could tell her about the other woman, the baby, her phone buzzed. A text from Ronald. He's at home. Says we need to talk urgently. That he can explain everything. Let me come with you, I urged. No, Mama. This is between husband and wife. But thank you for being here when I needed you, even after how I treated you. As she left, I pressed my evidence folder into her hands, just in case his explanation doesn't add up.
For 3 days, I heard nothing. My calls went unanswered, texts unread. I drove by their house twice. Once I saw Camille's car, once I saw Ronald's, never Estelle's. Then, on the 4th day, my doorbell rang at 2 a.m. Camille stood there, clutching the sleeping Elijah, a single suitcase at her feet. Rain had soaked her clothes, plastered her hair to her face, or maybe it was tears. Hard to tell in the darkness. He has another family, she said, her voice hollow. A woman named Victoria, a 6-month-old daughter. I pulled them inside, took Elijah from her arms. How did you find out? I asked, though I already knew. I followed him. After I confronted him about the money, he got a call and said he had to handle something. He was so nervous, so I followed him. Her eyes met mine, vacant with shock. They live in Brookhaven, in a beautiful apartment. He pays for everything. The baby looks just like him. I settled Elijah in the guest room, then returned to find Camille sitting motionless on my couch. 8 years, she whispered. 8 years of marriage. Was any of it real? I held her as sobs racked her body, as years of illusion crumbled into dust. My strong, proud daughter broken open by betrayal. When dawn came, we made a plan. She would file for separation, freeze the remaining accounts, document everything. But at noon, as we prepared to meet with a lawyer friend of Terrence's, a black Mercedes pulled into my driveway. Estelle stepped out, immaculately dressed as always, her face a mask of concern. "Camille, darling," she called through the door I refused to open. "Whatever Ronald's done, we can fix it together. Don't throw everything away because of one mistake. Camille moved beside me, facing the woman she'd once admired more than me. The woman who told her I wasn't smart enough to respect. "Go away, Estelle," she said, voice steady. "I know everything now." Estelle's mask slipped, just slightly. "You don't know anything, girl, but you're about to learn how the real world punishes foolish women who don't know when to keep quiet." The next morning, we went to Camille's house to collect more of her and Elijah's belongings. Ronald's car wasn't there. "He texted that he's staying at a hotel," Camille explained as she unlocked the door. "Says he needs space to figure things out." What we found inside chilled me to the bone. The house had been ransacked, not by thieves, but by someone looking for something specific. Drawers pulled out, papers scattered, Camille's jewelry box emptied. "My documents," she gasped, running to a home office. "The folder you gave me, it's gone." But Ronald had been sloppy in his rush. In the master bedroom closet, behind a row of designer suits, Camille found a hidden safe we'd never known existed. "I don't know the combination," she said, staring at it. "Try your birthday," I suggested. "No, wait." Her hands shook as she dialed numbers. "The day he proposed, he always said it was the most important day of his life." The safe clicked open. Inside, passports, including fakes with Ronald's photo, but different names, bundles of cash, hard drives, and most damning of all, a notebook in Estelle's handwriting detailing investments from dozens of women with notes like "easy target" and "desperate after divorce." Camille's name was there too. Next to it, Estelle had written, "Perfect front. Mother's money is the real prize." "They were after your inheritance from your father, the money I've been keeping for you and Terrence." Camille sank to the floor, the notebook clutched to her chest. "I brought him to you. I let him into our family." As we loaded the evidence into my car, Terrence called. "Mama, Ronald just emptied the business account at his firm. Police are looking for him. Is Camille with you?" The next hours blurred together. Police officers taking statements in my living room, Camille describing how Ronald had convinced her to sign papers she never read, me explaining the fraudulent loan attempts in my name. "This isn't just a domestic dispute," said Detective Rivera, a sharp-eyed woman who'd seen it all. "This looks like a long-running financial fraud operation. Multiple victims, multiple jurisdictions." She leaned forward, addressing Camille directly. "Mrs. Johnson, based on these documents, your mother-in-law Estelle wasn't just aware, she was a co-conspirator. This investment club scheme has her fingerprints all over it." Camille's face hardened. Find them both." While they were still there, Ronald called Camille's phone. The detective nodded for her to answer on speaker. "Baby, this is all a misunderstanding," he said, voice smooth as ever. "Meet me at the airport. We'll go away for a while, let things cool down. I've got tickets for us and Elijah." "What about Victoria and your daughter? Are they coming too?" Silence. Then, "Who told you that lie? Your mother? She's always trying to come between us." "I saw them, Ronald. I stood outside their home and watched you play daddy to another child while ours waited for you at home." His voice changed then, hardened. "You ruined everything. Years of work destroyed because you couldn't mind your own business." "It was my business, my money, my life you stole. You never appreciated what I gave you, what we could have had." Detective Rivera took the phone. "Mr. Johnson, this is Detective Rivera, Atlanta PD. We need you to come in and answer some questions." He hung up. The police traced the call to the international terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. By the time officers arrived, Ronald had boarded a flight to a country with no extradition treaty. But Estelle wasn't as lucky. They found her at her luxury condo, packing designer clothes into suitcases, passport in hand. I wasn't there for her arrest, but Terrence was. He said she looked smaller somehow, without her armor of jewelry and pretension. She kept asking for her lawyer, kept insisting it was all Ronald's doing. 2 days later, the full extent of their crimes became clear. 27 women had been defrauded through the investment club. Clients from Ronald's firm had money missing. 3 banks had flagged suspicious transactions. And most shocking of all, this wasn't their first time. Detective Rivera found sealed records from Florida, from California. Different names, same scheme. Ronald and Estelle, mother and son, not mother-in-law and son-in-law, had done this before. Yes, mother and son. The ultimate deception. Camille collapsed when she heard this final truth. 8 years living with a stranger, loving a lie. The woman I'd thought was my rival for my daughter's affection was actually the architect of her destruction. The man she'd married was nothing but a character played by a gifted con artist. As reporters gathered outside my home, as bank investigators combed through years of records, Camille sat in my kitchen, hollow-eyed and shattered. I chose them over you. I told you you weren't even half as smart as her. I took her hands in mine. Baby, sometimes the smartest thing is knowing what you don't know, knowing who to trust. They were professionals at deception. You were just trying to believe in love. But the words couldn't reach her yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too complete. That night, as I tucked Elijah into bed, he asked, "Is Daddy a bad man?" How do you answer such a question? How do you explain to a child that his father never really existed? I said, "Your daddy made bad choices, but you are good, and you are loved by your mama, by me. That will never change." In the hallway, I found Camille listening, silent tears tracking down her face. How do we come back from this, Mama? How do I ever trust anyone again?
Spring turned to summer, summer to fall. Healing doesn't follow seasons neatly, but time does its work nonetheless. Ronald remained a fugitive, his stolen millions presumably funding a new life, a new identity, a new con somewhere beyond reach. But his disappearance provided its own kind of closure. Estelle, whose real name turned out to be Eleanor Jeffries, accepted a plea deal. 15 years for fraud, money laundering, and identity theft. In exchange, she provided evidence against her son and returned what money she still controlled. It wasn't much. Most victims, including Camille, recovered pennies on the dollar. My daughter and grandson moved in with me permanently. The bank foreclosed on their house. The luxury cars were repossessed. The designer clothes sold to pay attorney fees. "I keep waiting to miss it all," Camille confessed one evening as we sat on my porch swing. "The things, the status, but I don't. They never really felt like mine anyway." Slowly, painfully, she rebuilt her life from scratch. Found a job at a local accounting firm, her business degree finally put to use. Enrolled Elijah in the public school down the street. Learned to clip coupons and shop sales, skills she'd once looked down on when I did them. The hardest part was facing the other victims, women who'd trusted her, who'd invested in Ronald's schemes because of her endorsement. "I was responsible too," she told me after one particularly difficult encounter at the grocery store. "Not for the fraud, but for the pride. I wanted them to envy me, to see me as special because of who I married, what I owned." That recognition marked the true beginning of her healing. 6 months after Ronald disappeared, Camille received divorce papers from an overseas lawyer. She signed them without a second thought.
A year to the day after that fateful dinner, the one where she told me I wasn't half as smart as her mother-in-law, we sat together sorting old photographs for a family album. "Look at this one," I said, pulling out a picture of her at age 8, proudly holding a science fair ribbon. "First place," she remembered, smiling, "for the project you helped me with, the one about plant growth under different light conditions." I didn't help that much, just bought the supplies. The ideas were all yours. She looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "You always did that, gave me room to shine, never took credit." That's what mothers do. Not all mothers. Not Estelle with Ronald. She molded him into her tool, her creation. We sat in silence for a moment, contemplating how different kinds of love shape different kinds of people. "You know what real intelligence is, Mama? It's not schemes or manipulation or fancy words. It's wisdom, knowing what matters, building something that lasts." Later that week, Camille registered for night classes at the community college, accounting and finance, so I never get fooled again, and so I can help other women protect themselves. As for me, I found my healing in unexpected places. In the garden I taught Elijah to tend, in the Sunday school class I still taught at church, in the quiet knowledge that my way of loving, steady, unflashy, rooted in truth, had ultimately been my daughter's salvation. One evening, as we washed dishes side by side, Camille broke our comfortable silence. "Mama," she said, voice soft but steady, "I need to say something I should have said a long time ago." I dried a plate, waiting. "You're not just smarter than Estelle. You're the smartest woman I've ever known. Not because of degrees or money or status, but because you know how to love without destroying, how to give without taking, how to stay when it would be easier to leave." The plate nearly slipped from my hands. "I'm so sorry for what I said that day, for believing flash over substance, for choosing the wrong example to follow." I set down the dish towel and pulled her into my arms, this child of mine who had traveled so far to come back home. "Baby, the smartest thing I ever did was refuse to give up on you, even when you gave up on me." We stood there in my small kitchen, 2 generations of women who had weathered a storm that could have torn us apart forever. Instead, it had revealed the unbreakable steel at the core of our bond. True intelligence isn't measured in schemes or status symbols. It's counted in the lives you touch, the love you give, the legacy you leave behind. It's found in the strength to begin again when everything is lost, in the wisdom to recognize that sometimes the quietest voice carries the deepest truth. If you're watching this and feeling lost, betrayed, or alone, know that true worth can't be stolen. Real love doesn't diminish you, and sometimes the person you dismissed might be the very one holding the light to guide you home. Subscribe to hear more stories of betrayal, redemption, and the quiet power of a mother's love. Tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was wearing a mask? Your insight might help another person tonight who's carrying their own hidden battles. Lastly, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment.